Here we go. Lee Jennings, thank you for being on the Heart Dealer podcast. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. This is gonna be fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Before we hit play or record, I'm already messing up. You were mentioning it's day one of tour within this moment.
Yes, exactly. So we've technically I don't think tour is ended for us once in the past year. I feel like it's just been one gigantic tour, but technically this leg, which is within this moment in Dayseeker, starts today in Dallas, Texas.
Nice. Good for you. Life on road, glorious or not all that is cracked up to be according to what fans see.
It's a little bit of both, right? Like I live, we're not like a party band, we're not like a crazy band. We're pretty simple. For many years we lived in a Sprinter van. That I basically bought a Sprinter van in 2014 when the band started.
Mhm.
And I put 375,000 miles on it and,
Wow.
since 2014 till what January, March, April of last year. So, a good 10 years, a little bit over that of just grinding on that, and now we're in an RV, as you can see behind me. We have a little bit of our memorabilia over here from festivals or meeting people at cons, or we got stuff hanging on our fridge, or just make it a little bit more at home, and
Yeah.
I think living in a RV is great. It's fun. The RV that I bought us isn't like super luxurious. We couldn't afford like a $300,000 RV. You know what I mean? I went on the lot and we all kind of started looking at stuff and I was like, okay, this one already has two bunks and a bunk above the driver. That means I only need to make five in the back. Okay, let's see what we can do. So we bought it. And then we ripped out all the stuff in the back of the RV, which was like just the queen bed. And we put five bunks back there. And so five people in the back, two in the side over on this side, you can kind of see right there. And then I sleep up above the driver. So
That's cool. I mean, good for you for, getting your hands dirty, rolling up the proverbial sleeves and doing it yourself.
we have to. We're still that band, we roll pretty short, Like I think there's only because there's five guys in the band, right? And then we've got a content creator, and he does all like the videos and the photos and stuff. And he does help. He'll help with like load in and stuff. And he's a great guy to help. And then we've got a front of house slash tour manager, and he's our sound guy, and he does all that kind
Mhm.
of stuff. He helps a lot on the stage. And then we have a merch girl slash makeup artist slash my assistant, and she kind of helps me with keeping my head on straight most days, which is really good. And then we have a driver, and the driver, though, he's very lucky. He gets a hotel every day because he's got to sleep. He's got to sleep.
Sure.
And there's a lot of these venues will have like three green rooms, and when you're the fourth band on the package, or the headlining band has to have three of the four green rooms, and then the direct support band needs a green room. So we're stuck in the RV for a green room. The driver can't sleep in there if we're all in there making lots of noise. So,
Absolutely. I mean, he is going to be doing like off hours, making sure you guys are safe. The destination is destination. Let him
yep.
sleep.
Yes, exactly. And that's very important to us. I think he's a great driver and he's good at what he does. And I think it's important to have that.
100%. It's funny because you mentioned rolling up your sleeve, or I did, and then you talked about we're very much that band. I think that never really changes, right? Like the DIY attitude is healthy to have for life. And sure, you make more money, hopefully, and you grow, and then you can offload work by outsourcing, but then that frees up time to do more DIY stuff in other areas, whatever that might.
Exactly. Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head a lot with that, because for us, like, we we do so much on tour and off tour. This band
Mhm.
is a 24-hour gig, a 24/7 hour gig. I think about it. I'm working on this band every day of my life. Off tour, I'm on phone calls with our manager or our agent or a merch rep, or this person or that person, or doing these interviews or whatever it is. For me, it's an everyday gig, and I have to be. And I think the bands that kind of sit back and just let things coast, or they like give everybody a job, I don't know if that's the smartest move sometimes. I think for us, doing it our way, helps us, it keeps you grounded, of course, but I think it also helps us, and of course, it keeps more money in your pocket, quote, quote, right? And we're still in this building phase. This year is still so discovery for us. We're still in the discovery phase of the tours that we're taking. Uh, the guarantees aren't that crazy high, and stuff like that because we are just lucky to just be there. And for us, if we had a full service crew and a bus and all this stuff, we'd be in debt. You know what I mean? I'm already in debt to a label. I don't want to be in debt to a bank as well. You know what I mean? And I think I see these bands, their very first tours they ever do, post COVID because they blew up on TikTok. They rented these buses and they had a 7-person crew and a band, and they're living the high life and all this stuff, getting hotels every night. And it's like, bro, you're gonna come home and you're gonna owe a bank, or a credit card company, $200,000 because you just spent everything, and
Mm,
it's just hard, and we as a band, we like to get our hands dirty. I think the fans enjoy that too because it comes from the heart that way. It comes from us.
yeah. I love where you're going with this, and I wanna talk about industry. I actually have questions specifically related to record labels and music, but let's go kind of in order. Lee Jennings is born, from what I understand, in Atlanta, Georgia, and there might have been musical theater involved. There was bullying in middle school. We'll talk about those in more detail, but tell me about it, your family life, your home life. Like, who are you, and what ultimately led you to musical theater?
So I grew up, I always felt like I didn't fit in because I'm tall. I'm 6'4", right? I've been 6'4" basically since, like, elementary school. I grew very fast. I've always been a bigger guy too, on the heavier side and stuff like that, and it just no matter what I did, no matter how active I was, it's just who I was. I grew up, I loved, Pokemon and, Yu-Gi-Oh! And that kinda stuff. That was just my life, and then, I really loved to bowl growing up too. That was something I was really into, but then I still didn't feel, that was fun and that was fine, but at the same time, I feel like when I discovered singing, which was at an early age, I was in elementary school, my course teacher took my mom aside and was like, "He's got a voice, like, you should go get lessons or something," and I was trying to find what I was good at or what I like to do, and it worked. I took singing lessons very early on, then I took acting lessons, and eventually led to dancing, and, my family, I lived with my grandparents and my mom, from the day I was born, until even currently. I think, for me, I was very lucky to have such a supportive family for no matter
Mhm.
what I did. If it was, one year I tried sports or I tried football, and I just hated it. It just wasn't for me, right? And that's when I tripled down to musical theater. I was like, okay, I want to go to the special school, which was a performing arts kind of magnet program school in my town, and I got in, and it was this big deal because for me, that's all I thought about. I was like, I got to go there. Then I want to be on Broadway. I want to go to a special college. And then this is this. For me, though, I always struggled with school itself, the school work. And the reason why is so having like dyslexia and having like, all these like mental blockers and having anxiety and all these things, then eventually learning that I have OCD and all these things make a lot of sense now, but you can't tell a kid that because it just doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
Of why am I failing math? This doesn't make sense to me. One plus one is two. You know what I mean? But it's just more than that, in school, and for me, I was just like, I just didn't fit in school in general, like not just with the kids, but with schooling. I just didn't care. I didn't want to do that stuff. And for me, the way that I learn is hands on, right? I'm a very hands on person. I got to be hands on. I have to do it. Even to this day, like I said, we get our hands dirty. Yeah, I've got a merch girl, but guess what? I get in that trailer and I sling merch and I help her and I do what I can because I like to get my hands dirty because it also shows me in real time I'm doing something to make sure that this is working, and if I'm not doing it, no one else will. And so I think that goes back to the schooling, of that's just how I learned. I learned
Yeah.
hands on. That's why I liked musical theater because it was hands on. There was no books. You know what I mean? Yeah, learning how to sing and learning to read notes and stuff like that, like for like honor chorus or whatever, all state choirs, what they called it. I went every year from kindergarten to senior year. I went every single year. I got a little plaque, I got a little medal, blah, blah, blah. I got like money to go to a scholarship, all this stuff. Never used it. But for me, I just was like, that's it has to be hands-on for me to wanna do it.
Well, that explains also a lot why, you're so DIY as a musician and as a band now, and I agree. I have a small team. I know from experience in the business world that one of the things that kills companies is expanding too fast, hiring too much, because that's your biggest expense, right? Is your salary. So the more you can keep it insulated and teach and grow rather than just hiring out, the better your success is. And I also believe that in rolling up our sleeves and doing work, we don't have to do that job, but it's good to know that job because then you have a knowledge share so that if that
Mhm.
person's out, someone can pick up the slack. You never have these like bottlenecks of, oh my God, no one knows how to upload this to YouTube. So we're screwed because Chris is on holiday. Learn it and know it. That doesn't mean you have to do it, but have a
Yep.
cursory understanding of different things. Like you probably don't know how to, fix an entire bus, but there's probably things about the bus that you now know how you could do so that if something comes up in an emergency situation, you're like, we got this.
Mhm. Well, that's true, and I think that's everybody in our team has a little bit that they have to do, right? So, like, Rob, our bass player, right? He is so good at making appointments and doing stuff like that, or when the driver needs help parking or, do this or stage managing, stuff like that. Like, he is so good at that. So we just let him do that. Or packing the trailer. He's so good at that, right? Organizing the trailer. That's his job. That is his job in the band, right? Everything else I don't need him to do any of that. I don't need him to do anything else because he does that so well. That's his job. And everyone kind of has that thing. But we were on our tour earlier this year in February, and almost all of us were getting sick at the same time. It was like a day or so in between. Everybody was getting sick, and our merch girl, she got sick. She could not run merch in Orlando. Right? There was just no way she was getting out of bed. And I was like, well, roll my sleeves up, pack in that merch, count it in, know what I have, and I ran merch the whole night. You know what I mean? And guess what? We sell a lot of merch that way because people want to come talk to me. But that's it too. Is I'm always at the merch table. I'm always hanging out. I'm always meeting fans, and that's so important because like that is that. You say the DIY aspect, and that's part of it. We're building a community every single day, and that's so important to what this band is.
Yeah. So going back, you've kind of painted this picture. I'm very straightforward, so I'm just going to ask stuff. If you don't want to answer, that's fine. You didn't mention dad. Where was dad in this whole perspective? And did you have a male role model growing up?
Yeah, so I definitely had a role model. My grandfather, insanely important to me. I never met my dad. He just wasn't in the picture. It was just one of those situations that my mom felt better that he wasn't in the picture, right? Which is great. That's fine with me. My mom was incredible, is incredible. My grandparents were incredible, is incredible. My grandfather helped me build my studio. He literally he took half of his garage in his house that he owns, that I live in for free and turned it into a studio with me, and I recorded a lot of local bands. I recorded a lot of our demos. We just demoed out a new song the other day because we had 3 days off in Atlanta and we just sat there and demoed out a song, and that's important that I had that, because it's one of those things that like I got very lucky. To this day, he helps so much with the RV stuff, with all this stuff. Yeah, he's a little bit on the older side, but that doesn't mean anything. He's still, he literally drove last year when we did our tour Five Finger Death Punch. It was our biggest tour ever, right? Biggest tour to date, to be real. And what it was is we went from doing 250 cap club tours to literally a stadium slash arena slash amphitheater tour. And the very first day of the tour was in Pennsylvania at the Hershey Park Stadium. And we knew that there was over like 18,000 tickets sold. It was a big deal. My grandfather drove my mother and my aunt and my little cousin, who's like now into music. He's like 16 and he's like so into music. And a lot of that has to do with me showing him stuff, over the past few years. And he was like, I got to go to that show. They literally took him out of school for 2 days so that way they could drive all the way up there. My grandfather drove all the way up there. They stayed in a really cool Airbnb. They went to the theme park that was there one day, and then the next day they came to the show, and then they drove back. He drove back, and, that's how supportive my grandfather is and my mom is and my whole family, and that's the backbone of this band is everyone being so supportive.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love to hear that. Family is a huge part of my life too, and, it's funny, I kind of went into this podcast, I think I'm 20 episodes in now, thinking like stereotypically art comes from pain and struggle and all, these people are going to be s- um not necessarily single, but come from broken homes. And the
Mhm.
majority of people I've spoken to so far have had really loving, supportive upbringings. They're all different in their own way
Yeah.
with present, but they've all been very um positive.
Well, with mine, there was definitely hard times without a father, right? Because every kid in school like had a dad and all these things. All my best friends had dads and very supportive family and all this stuff. And like I have a very supportive family. Doesn't mean that it's not weird family, you know what I mean? Or with mine, a lot of my pain comes from within or I've been through lots of serious relationships. I'm a very serious long-term relationship kind of guy and they just don't work out. Some of it's because of me, of course, and some of it's in my OCD and all these problems that I'm learning that I have that I didn't know that I had. My anxiety disorder, my depression, or any of those. I didn't know or understand like OCD. I didn't know, and I didn't understand anxiety. I didn't know that stuff until very recently. Of what can do that. So like for me, a lot of my pain and a lot of my sorrow could have been maybe prevented if I knew how to deal with it earlier on, right? And
Sure.
that's the part of growing up, right? That's the part of learning and getting to know yourself and to know other people. And, I think I'm very lucky. I've been going to therapy for 15 years, 16 years, 17 years. I don't even know. I've been seeing the same therapist forever too. And he like gets me, he understands me, and it's great. Um,
Good.
and for me, there's no excuse for bad behavior or acting a certain way, but I think it's about being a human and about growing. And, I think I've grown so much, especially in the last like 4 years, 5 years post COVID.
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes from actually having time off. For the first time in the past 10 years, I had 2 years basically off to rediscover myself, right? And I was in a relationship, I was in a very serious relationship, and it was a great relationship for those 2 years. And then touring started again. And it turned out to being a very heavy relationship that needed to end for both parties. I think one person wasn't getting what they wanted out of their partner, which was me, right? I wasn't getting, or she wasn't getting what she wanted, as someone that could be around her or give her attention all the time or all these things,
Mhm.
um, or even whatever. And then I was just not in the headspace to even be around anybody.
Yeah.
My life changed so fast last year from going from 250 cap venues to 17,000 cap venues to meeting fans for hours and hours and then going viral on social media every so often. And these moments and these people wanting to know me and going to Walmart, literally my local Walmart the other day, right before tour, I went in there. It's literally me and my assistant, and we're grabbing stuff for the RV. The RV's parked out front, whatever. And this lady, she comes up to me. She's like, "Oh my God, are you Lee from the funeral portrait?" I was like, "Yeah." She was like, "Oh, I saw you guys play the Tabernacle not too long ago. Can you take a photo of me and my son?" I said, "Sure." That's very special and that's very different. That doesn't happen to everybody, right?
Yeah.
That's something I'm not used to. I'm not used to being on all the time, right? And I feel like now I have to be on all the time, which I don't really have an issue with because I am very me. I just am who I am. I'm not apologetically like anybody else.
Yeah.
I am who I am. I've made tremendous mistakes, so as any human ever, and nothing serious, but you know what I mean? As in like in relationships or in friendships or in business or in this band, I've done stupid things as in like taken a tour that we shouldn't have taken for
Mhm.
$500 a night. I've done stupid ideas, printed way too much merch, or whatever it is, and those are those mistakes though that make you who you are. And I learned that um very early on, but every day I get humbled by something, and I think that's very important.
I mean, that's the human experience. If it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you, and I learned this, I too, regularly have a therapist and regularly do therapy,
Mhm.
minimum once a month, and for me, it's not been as long, like, I kind of dabbled in the past, and then about a year and a half, 2 years ago, my wife and I split, and, it was the first time really went inward hard where I said, "Okay, this is the second time I've had a divorce. This is the second time a long-term relationship has failed. Maybe it's me. Maybe I
Yeah,
need to look at myself." Well, it doesn't mean that both people don't have a hand at the relationship ending,
of
but I need
course.
to take a more serious look into myself. And it was during that process, the healing process, which, as you and I know, never ends, it's ongoing. My therapist said, well, this is important for you to learn because empathy happens through the pain. You only
Mhm.
learn how to be supportive of others going through that when you have gone through it. So I don't think
Completely.
of what you've gone through is bad. It's shaping you and it's making it easier for you to then help others that are going through that for the first time. And I think that's one of the things we're going to talk about. So middle school, it sounds funny to maybe outsiders thinking like this guy's big and strong and that's his problem, but, like, I had that same problem too. So
Mhm.
I was born in Toronto, lived a pretty normal life, and then I got to middle school. I'm I guess 11, 12 years old, and I was already a pretty big dude. I was, like, one of the biggest guys in my class. I'm about 6 and a half, 6'1" right now, and I'm usually about 200 to 230 pounds, somewhere in there. I played semi-pro baseball, and I remember being, like, the guy who was the second biggest, and there was this other, kid, Paul Polachek, who was even bigger than me, and I was the only one that could tackle him in football, and I was the only so there's a sense of normalcy with all that stuff, but then I was also like, I don't know if I matured faster and I was talking about things like sexual topics that other people weren't, and I was very outspoken, and so all of a sudden I realized no one wants to talk to me at school. I'm just like, okay, in a school of what was it, 1,400 people? Like, no one wants to talk to me. Then you start to question yourself and am I a loser and all that, even though I'm this like, good looking bigger dude. So I understand where you're coming from. How did you get through that? I mean, was it all music? Was it rock and roll?
A lot of it was. A lot of it was music. I think that's why I found quote punk rock. That's why I found rock. Music is because it was spoken to the outcast, right? It was for the outcast, right? Especially the stuff I was really into. And for
Yeah.
me, a lot of that is from, I didn't get along with a lot of kids in my school because we didn't weren't into the same stuff, right? And
Mm,
I was like really into video games in middle school, early middle school, and then I got into music, emo and rock or whatever it was in 8th grade. And by then I was still getting picked on all the time for not just what I wore, but how I looked, or that I didn't want to play sports or this or that, or because I sang, or because, you know, I wanted to go to a special school for musical theater, or all these things, right? So for me, I think I just wanted to fit in, right? I wanted to fit in so bad. That's all I cared about. To the fact that like I put stuff to the side, like my morals or all these other things, that like I shouldn't have.
mhm,
My friends, my true friends, I sold them out for something so I could go hang out with this person or that person, and eventually I learned from that, of course. As you do. And I think for me, I I think eventually the way you get through it is you just do, right? Is you just do. And I think for me, I was very easily persuaded to try stuff or to do stuff that I maybe didn't want to do. But I do it once and I'll be like, okay, that's not for me. And which is great. Because now I'm very like, I am who I am. Right? And I think once I discovered that, once I was like, "Okay, this is who I am. No one's gonna change me. This is just me."
mhm.
Life became so easy. And that's a very recent discovery too for me. To be real, I think I think within the last year, I've finally discovered how to be myself,
Mm,
and I wish I could go back to middle school and elementary school and high school and tell myself that, because I again, middle school sucked. I got sprayed in the eyes once with deodorant, with, like, Axe body spray, and I retaliated and I pushed the kid, but since I pushed the kid, if I wanted to get that kid suspended, I would have to get suspended as well because I
Yeah.
pushed him. And that doesn't make sense to me. Now, bullying laws and rules and stuff are different, right? But back when I was in middle school, you lay your hands on someone, even if they're bullying you, that doesn't mean anything. That means that you're the guy who laid the hands. And I remember I, threatened to beat up a bunch of kids at school one time and they wanted to suspend me. Thankfully, the principal had a son that was bigger that had gotten bullied before. And so he realized that, what it was, that it was just being bullied. So he didn't suspend me and he didn't ruin my chances of going to this special high school. Because if I got suspended, I wouldn't have gone to this special high school. And I went to the special high school for 2 years and I hated it. First year, I loved it because I was a freshman that everybody wanted on their team. It felt like I was pick me because I was good at what I did. And then I got into music even more, like outside music, and I started working at a venue and all these things. And I stopped caring as much about, I felt like my calling was changing, right?
Mhm.
And so I stopped doing as much stuff in school. So then, sophomore year came around and it just didn't work. I wasn't in it anymore. So eventually I left. I went to my home school for the last 2 years. And I still did. Oh, excuse me. I still
All
did musical theater. I still did what I wanted to do. But it wasn't fully what I wanted. You know what I mean? It fully wasn't it. For me, I kept dreaming of going back to this venue that I was working at the time and doing that, working the shows and being in a band. That's what I wanted
Yeah.
to do. I wanted to be in a band. I wanted to do this. I wanted to be in a band so bad. And so eventually I missed the opportunity of going to college, which was fine. I didn't want to go to college. I'm glad I didn't go to college for something I'm going to call it stupid, but like musical theater or stuff like that because like yeah, they could teach you all these things, but at the same time like if you're not going to really do it, if you're not going to give it your all and be at every audition ever and devote your whole entire life to it, it's a little silly to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to do it, right?
Yeah.
It just is, and I'm glad I didn't do that, because I wasn't in love with it. I was in love with music. I was in love with being in a band and doing that, and so I started doing my own bands, and in high school, I had a pretty successful band, especially locally. It was really good, and we almost got signed to a bigger label, and it didn't go there because of everybody else. Everybody else in the band just wasn't ready for it. They kept getting in fights together and this and that. So I stopped it and I started a new band. That band, same deal happened. It's got pretty big in the local scene, got some labels interested, and it just fell apart.
Mhm.
It just didn't do anything. So then my third try, really my third try, it was like, okay, let's do it. And we did it. And then we signed to a little label. And signing to the little label, they're like, hey, you should change your band name. We don't really like it. It was a band called Cosmoscope. And that turned into The Funeral Portrait. And
Yeah.
with doing that, that's how it was. Is it was just one thing after the next. I kept thinking of what was next.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important to keep going because oftentimes you only succeed after immense amounts of failure. And I mean, just going back to high school for a second, because I think there's important notes in there, or middle school, high school is. I mean, this saying applies to different things, but it's not the size of the dog in the fight; it's the size of the fight in the dog, right? So, for people out there that might feel horrible about where they are, bullied, etc. You can be a big dude, a good-looking dude, a talented dude, a smart dude, and still be bullied. You've got
Mhm.
2 guys here who've endured that same thing, but it was through that bullying that we started to sharpen our senses to learn about ourselves and ultimately lead our path forward. I had a similar thing happen in, middle school. 'Cause I wasn't really I was big and strong, but I wasn't really a violent guy. I was almost, like, scared of violence, and I
That's me.
remember
Yep.
Adam one day, like, you're sitting in middle school and you got the 4 desks and you're kind of sitting next to someone and facing someone. And this guy, Adam, across from me, I got like a test back and like I got a C or whatever it was. And he was just doing this, don't cry, Chris, don't cry. Oh my God, bad grade, don't cry. And for some reason, that was the day, that was the moment that I snapped. And I got up in front of the whole class and I grabbed him by the shirt and I walked him across the classroom. And I slammed him against the backboard. And then my old self kicked in and I started to cry and I ran out of the classroom.
Yep.
But that moment was so pivotal and memorable for me because the teacher came out and teacher was like, "What's going on?" And I explained, and then there was the whole meeting with the principals, and then the parents being called in, and they were like, "Oh man, Chris is the one being bullied. Like this is crazy." And I remember that guy was so freaked out that he came to me and he's like, "I'm in so much trouble, man. Like, what can I do?" He was basically trying to bribe me, which at a young age I accepted. I remember getting a Playboy. I remember getting $20, but most importantly, I remember getting some CDs. So even though I was into hip hop and rock, I remember getting like um Jimi Hendrix and like a Bob Marley album, just random stuff that I guess he gave me, but that also started to like change my musical tastes,
Hmm.
and I turned that negative into a positive.
That's sick.
It sounds like with your music and your life, you've been doing a lot of taking negative and turning it into positive as well.
Well, yeah, because I had to, right? Or I wouldn't have survived. I think that's kind of it, right? Is like, I think music is key here. I think what it does is it can change lives. I think it can save lives. I mean, we see it every day, right? I have kids that come up to me every single day, people all around the world that are like, oh, sorry, geez, that are just like, your music saved my life, or this song is so important to me, all these things, right? And I love that. And I love hearing that. I think for me though, I it's hard to accept that because I think for me, I am just doing it because I have to do it. I have to be in music. I have to do music. It is so important to me.
Mhm.
Uh, I can't stop,
Yeah,
and
I
I
know.
won't stop.
Once you find your calling, your passion, like it's so hard to walk away from it, even in those moments where it's too much. You maybe take a break, but you always come back to it.
Mhm,
Um, On IG, you have something pinned to your top, one of your top posts, and it talked about, I think it was about 6 weeks ago, it was Mental Health Awareness
mhm,
Month, talked about your story a bit more, and there were 2 things that I took away from it. It sounded like there might have been suicide attempts. Is that accurate?
mhm. Oh yeah, no, for sure. And I think for me, I think all of it was, I it's one of these moments of defeat where you get like, okay, well, this is it. Like my life is not working, right?
Yeah.
Like I had those many times growing up. But I think in modern time for me, the last few years, there's only one where I was just like, okay, well, I gave it my all. This is it. I don't want to
Mhm.
do this anymore. But what am I outside of music, right? Like, what are you outside of this? This is something that my therapist and I talk about all the time is outside of this band, who am I, right? Like,
Yeah.
what am I? And that was a big turning point for me of being like, well, I'm Lee Jennings and I could do whatever the fuck I want. Like I
Yeah.
can. I can. I could do anything from now on. Like it doesn't have to be right now. Like right now, I'm doing this. And if this band breaks up tomorrow, I could go do whatever I want to. You know what I mean? Yeah, money aside or time or whatever, but you know what I mean by that. Like you can achieve anything that you really want to because and I do believe in that because I did this. Right. I
Mhm.
have achieved 2 number 1 rock songs, played multiple sold out shows. My band is doing incredibly awesome things on tours and all these other things. But for me, it's it's knowing that I also have no backup plan is very important. And talking about like suicide and stuff like that. Like for me, like, yeah, I didn't want to be here anymore because I thought my life was over. But not true. Your life isn't over because something ends, just because of a breakup or because a parent dies or because a dog dies or because something that you've been working on for 10 years is over or dies, right? That can just be the beginning of
Yeah,
something completely new. Oh, god dang. Something completely new and exciting in your life.
I agree.
Because that's what it was. That's exactly what the funeral portrait was. Is as soon as my old local band died, the funeral portrait was born, and that was something completely new. It's scary. I didn't really wanna do it, but,
Oh, man, like, did you come up with a band name?
we came up with it kinda together, so we were trying to think of names, we were all writing them down, and basically, we wanted something that was something that didn't sound like anything else at the time. We wanted something spooky because the type of
Yeah.
music we were making, but we also wanted something that was a little bit more memorable, but also didn't sound like any other band, you know? And so Funeral Portrait was born.
It almost sounds like I apologize if this is already available knowledge, but it almost sounds like the death of oneself and looking at that death and then saying, "Okay, this is gonna be the end of that chapter. Let's move forward with a new portrait." It's the
Mhm.
perception, I guess, from there.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's pretty much it. Nail on the head. You know, um, I think for us, we just wanted something that was really about a lot of like life after death, not in a heaven sense, but
Yeah.
as an ego sense, out of a self sense, you know.
Mhm.
Um, and it worked. You know, it's really that way.
Good for you. So that IG post, there was a second thing there that caught my attention. It was your quote, "My story, is what has kept me alive." So, obviously, you and I are older now, and we have
Mhm.
therapy, and we have help, and we've, like, loving families and bands, which are extensions of our families. To other people out there that might not be in our same situation, like, what would you recommend they should be doing? What does "My story is what kept me alive" mean?
You know, for me, I think it's knowing that people needed me to be alive for them to be happy or for them to be part of this world or for all these things, right? I think so many people rely on me.
Mhm.
Um, Not just my band, not just my current partner, not just my dog, not just my mom or, you know, whatever it may be. My fans, you know what I mean? They need me to do this because they need these. They need this outlet of going to the shows or listening to the music or whatever it is. You know, I think I'm so if I'm not doing it for myself, I need to do it for someone else, right?
Mhm.
I try so hard to not be like a, self-centered. I care a lot about other people. I'm a people pleaser at
Mhm.
times. You know, something I'm working on too, is finally saying no to things, which is hard for me. The word no is very hard, in any sense. And so excuse me. You know, for me, though, going back to it, you know, I think my story is important not just to myself, but to everyone, right?
Mhm.
And this goes for anybody. I think this goes for anybody. I think, you know, even if you think that you are at your lowest of your low and you matter to no one, okay, well, you matter to no one right this second. You could go out to Walmart and you could maybe meet the love of your life, right?
Yep.
You know, or you could, you know, it's hard because like I think about it too is like, you know, how we talked about like meeting your soulmate, right? And being like, well, is there any of my soul left by the time that I meet my soulmate, you know?
Yeah.
Because I've been beaten down, beaten down, beaten down. That's hard because I've thought of it about it before of like meeting the one, right? This was something that I was always so scared of, and I talked to my therapist about it because I had just been through a really tough breakup. I was like, well, I feel like she was the one, she is the one, whatever. And he's like, there is no the one, right? That doesn't exist. There's no such thing as the one. There's many. There's people that fit in your life for 5 minutes, or there's people that fit in your life for 5 years, or for the
Yes.
rest of it. You know, it's about the time and the place and where you're at. And for me, um, I was in these relationships, during that time of my life, right?
Mhm.
For that. It's just the same thing with I'm living my life in this moment, for that, you know,
Yeah.
but it's not for, um, you know, it's not forever, you know, and life isn't forever, you know, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have to realize that. Um,
I'm with you, Lee. Like, my therapist, I have 2,
mhm,
both women, one older, one younger, both, sharp. The older one, Barb, she, turned me on to this idea of a soul family. She
mm,
said, "Yeah, you have soulmates, but the concept that, like, the current societal constructed concept of a soulmate is you find one person and you're with that person for life." And it's like, that's not true because a soulmate could be a buddy. It could be the musician you interview that you become best friends with and you hang out. It could be the bandmates that you have until there's a falling out. It could be your mom. It could be your, your friends back in Toronto. My ex, like, we're not on great terms right now, but we were together for over 10 years. And as much as she might not believe me, I love her. I still love her. I think she's an incredible woman. I'm so happy that I have children with her. And she's very much a part of my soul family. Are we soulmates now? In the sense of, like, being romantic and all that? No, I have a new
Mhm.
partner and I'm so, perfectly matched with her,
Mhm.
but that's okay. The most important thing is to love yourself first, because then you're
Yep.
better suited to love other people and then have
Yep.
other people love you properly.
Yep. Completely.
So
No, completely. I think that was a big thing is I finally do love myself to the max. Not in an egotistical way, but in a self-loving way
yeah,
that I can now finally love, truly love other people. And not hurt them, not hurt myself, or not let them hurt me.
mhm,
Um, and their actions and their things, which is very important. I'm very lucky to have had these people in my life, these exes, as you say, or
mhm,
these people that I felt like were soulmates at the time, and they might have lasted a year or 2 years or five or whatever it is, and yeah, almost all of them ended poorly, and a lot of that is because of the way I love, right? And the way that they loved is we all loved with our whole hearts. So of course it's going to end poorly when you realize that you're not in love anymore,
yeah,
or you can't spend time with them anymore, or you don't want to work on things with them anymore, or you just need to focus on yourself or whatever it is. Of course that's going to hurt. People won't want you around, you know?
yeah. I agree. I'm 45 and it took me a whole lifetime or half a lifetime to learn that I need to look inwards more often and heal myself more often and do work on myself more often to be better available. I'm like you. I love helping others. I put everyone ahead of me. I will carry the weight of the world on my shoulders. But I had to learn the
But
hard
look
way
where
that
that got us, right? That's the
100%.
thing. That's look where that got us, and I think that's big because I think that's where it is being a people pleaser and being that person that's like, "Okay, okay, 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 okay." Um, that's when you get yourself in trouble, in
Yeah,
a relationship, that's where you get yourself in, "Well, I'm saying okay to this because I feel like I have to, not because I want to."
sure.
Um, is this okay for me, for
Yeah,
who I am and and I think for me, I'm learning that. And I'm in a very unique relationship right now that is very special and different than anyone I've ever been in because it's with someone that I don't think typically I would ever see myself going for because it's another main character. Let's put it that way. I don't date main characters because I am the main character,
yeah,
right? So now that I'm dating a main character, someone that is very eccentric, someone that's very weird and different and has had so many lives. She has lived so many lives before me.
mhm,
It's very different, but that is me. That's who I am. I've lived
mhm,
so many lives and I've done so many different things and I've dated so many different people and I've done this and this. She's done all that stuff too. So
yeah,
why should I put a blocker up and think that someone has to fit this mold that I've built to keep myself safe, where finally I let that mold disappear and I
yeah,
let someone else new come in, and it could be the best thing that has ever happened to me. The most unique thing that has ever happened to me, someone that actually gets it for once, which is hard.
yeah. I wanna comment on that, but really quickly, what I was gonna say earlier is that even if you are the type of person that carries the weight of the world on your shoulders and you want to help the world, which is okay, you still have to prioritize yourself. And my therapist said, like, imagine a Formula One race car. If you don't give it premium fuel, if you make sure that the don't make sure that the engine's topped up and that it's maintained by the best maintenance guys around or people around, then the car's not going to perform as well. And so that's one of my focuses now is how do I make sure that I am taking care of myself so that I can take care of everyone else. Now, going back to your other point, it's so funny you say that because I'm in the exact same, crossroads where I'm dating someone or I'm with someone now who I would have never picked before because she's not, the main character, and it's funny because, like, with my ex and previous relationships, I always went for strong, independent women similar to me. I'm a strong, independent man, but that ended up with us and my personality type butting heads because there were 2 Batman and not a Batman-Robin combo, and now I have a Robin to my Batman, and that doesn't mean that she's inferior to me. It just means that she fills the role that I need for my dynamic duo that I'm not capable of doing.
1000%.
You gotta go for someone different, so opposites
Yep.
attract.
Yep. 1000%.
Okay, well, we could probably talk, emotional all day long, but I really want to talk a bit about the band and the record industry because I love giving artists, just free info to help them with their careers. It's about life and love and also lessons and learning, right? With artistry. But before we get too serious, I got a weird one. I'm pink and blue, like I'm all about neon. I'm an 80s baby.
Okay,
Why
okay.
green hair? Why not orange hair? Why
So
green?
I have 0 tattoos, okay? I know that I'm a bigger guy, okay? And I know branding more than most people, because I've studied it multiple times. And I've lived it. I understand branding. I love branding. And for me, I wanted to brand our band and myself. And the best way to do that is by what's on top of your head.
Cool.
And I wear it every day. I don't change it, right? It's not a t-shirt, right? It's not a logo. It's my green hair. And for me, you can be at a festival and you see the green hair, you're like, ah, it's Lee from the funeral portrait. You know what I mean? Side stage, literally the other day, we went to Louder Than Life Festival, right? We played Saturday, but we went on Friday. I'm standing side stage watching a band, and in our Facebook group, I see someone from, they took a photo from a mile away. They're like, oh, I could see Lee side stage for this band. And it's like, yeah, that's me. You can't see anybody else there, but you knew it's me, and that's it. It's so much about branding. It's so much about being, I don't know, I wanted to be different too, like I'm a different kind of guy. And like I said, I have 0 tattoos. I don't if I just had brown hair, like you won't remember the funeral portrait as much, right? But now that I have the green hair, you remember it. Now, will it always be green? Probably not. You know what I mean? I think maybe next record cycle we'll change it up or something. I don't know, but it's important. This is a statement piece on its own to where
Yeah.
now you can see kids in line. I can a little bit see the line for the Tonight Show. There's a lot of kids wearing green. There's a lot of kids wearing purple and green. You could tell, up they're here for the funeral portrait. And
Yeah.
that's important. That's the important part.
That's cool. That's a better response than I even anticipated because I was more like, specifically just saying, "Why the color green?" Like, you know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Well,
Is
I've done so many different colors over the past years. I've done blue and red and orange and I don't know. I've done yellow. I don't know. I've done a bunch of different colors, right? Um, Green, I saw this one photo online. This guy made like he was taking like he called it a slime hawk, and it was because it was like this, it was like a mohawk, it was like slime color green, and I brought it to my hairdresser, and I was like, "Yo, make this, but make it a mullet," where I spike it up on top, and I bring this down really long, right? Let's do it. And she did it. And it was sick. It looked so good. And it was during COVID where I didn't have as much money as I normally would because we weren't touring. And
yeah,
I wasn't that busy in the studio or anything. So I couldn't afford to change it. You know what I mean? I could go back because she's expensive. Most hairdressers are expensive nowadays. And so to get it all done, I was like, well, this is my color now. And then we started rolling out music. And then people started having the green hair or they love the green hair. It just makes it so much easier. Now it's part of my brand. It's just who I am.
right.
We have t-shirts that have me on it with just the green hair. This. It's a thing now.
Yeah. I mean, it's smart. I love it. It's both, intelligent from a business perspective, but it's also authentically you. So good.
Mhm.
It's got the 2 things that matter most.
Yep.
So, Funeral Portrait forms in 2014 after the previous band gets renamed. You actually earlier said, like, you get to a low point after doing something for 10 years and it doesn't work out. Well, you're now at 10 years of the next thing.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, that first decade, disappointment or whatever, now you're already 10 years past that next milestone. How does it feel?
It's insane. I think being a band for 10 years, I've learned so much. I know what to do. I know what not to do. And I think the thing is this band Um, I don't think from here on out we could technically quote fail. I know that sounds weird. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't fail as in being mainstream, right? And making millions of dollars. But I think this band is has built such a core fan base that it can't fail as in it is already successful, right? And so which is really cool to know that no matter what I do, um, I have people that understand me and that love me.
Yeah. Awesome. Um, when it comes to your band, I had a whole bunch of questions around the lyrics and the content, but I feel like we touched on that so well with,
Mhm,
who you are and obviously an empathetic guy, and that's your approach to lyric writing. I mean, I had two that stood out. The cemetery is closed today, but I brought flowers anyway because I'm still in pain. And then for doom and
mhm,
gloom, there was, I don't think that I'm ever me. I think it's mostly just ADHD. You're putting
mhm.
yourself in the songs, which is, common for a lyricist. And
Exactly.
that's what, the fans are picking up on. So we'll skip that, and I'll simply ask, from the first album to the second album, why was there such a huge gap between LPs?
One was label. We were on different labels.
Mhm.
Uh, one was we went through a whole lineup change. Literally everybody in the band quit on me 2 months or 3 months after that first record came out. All new guys, and we fought really hard to get off the label that we were on. It was a little DIY label. And then basically we signed, and then we were getting ready to go into the studio in January, February of in March, April, kind of, and guess what happened in 2020? COVID. And that kind of put a pause. And we slowly worked on the record. And it was finally done basically 2 years. So like 2022 it was done. And then the whole label changed ownership, not ownership, but people that were working there.
Yep.
And then the new A&R came in and she was like, take that back. I want you guys to do the record you want to do. So we were like, okay, so let's add these 4 or 5 songs that we love that we've been demoing on. And we did that and we did it and it was sick. And then that kind of turned into this new record, and going back to lyrics, it's cool. I'm a very like collaborator when it comes to lyrics. What I do a lot is I bring some ideas. I'll write down notes or whatever, or little things like that. Like cemetery's closed today, so I brought flowers. Anyways, that's a true thing. Like so, basically, Hearse for Two. That song's about my grandmother passing away.
Oh,
And the idea of my grandfather, what it must have felt like for him the next morning, waking up that she's not there, right
yeah.
after being married for like 60 years. You know what I mean? So for me, I wanted to write a song about that, and that's called First for Two. And with that song, even so, like the way lyrics are written in our band is, I'll bring an idea to our songwriters or the people that we're collaborating with, or whoever it is in the band that we're working on songs with, or whatever it is. And I'll be like, okay, I want to write a song about my grandmother passing away. Here's some of my ideas. Let's sit down and fully write it out. So we fully write it out, and some of the lyrics come out. And same with the ADHD one. ADHD, I have ADHD. Caleb, our guitarist, he has ADHD way worse than me. And so we wanted to write a song that under, understands having ADHD and how much of it sucks and how much
Yeah.
of it of your life it eats away. And that's why it's so important to be real and honest for our band. There's a lot of bands I was talking earlier with the other band that we're on tour with called Dayseeker. They're super honest with their band too, and they're super, emotional and talk about their life and what they go through. That's
Mhm.
very important to us. That's what our bands do. Now, we're on tour. We've been on tour with another band called Ice Night Kills. They write songs about movies. So there's no emotion in it. It's
Yeah.
literally a song about The Walking Dead or Terrifier or The Matrix or whatever, and that's great and that's perfect, but that's their thing. That's not our thing,
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely. It's funny you mentioned ADHD, so I thought of this guy earlier. His name's Len May. He's also a podcaster, an author, an entrepreneur, and he's pitching a book to us right now that I think is a cool project. He started to talk about him and how he has ADHD, and it was really bad, and it was like kind of a crutch or a detriment until he started to look at it like a superpower and then learned how to leverage it to get more stuff accomplished. And that changed my whole perspective on things because
Yep.
I've never thought these things were detrimental, but I never thought about it from the perspective of a superpower and then flipping the script and saying, okay, how do I use this? Do you do the same thing?
Yeah, and that's kinda what that song's about, you know? You know what I mean? The usual doom and gloom, you know, that's kind of the whole idea is that it kind of is like what that is it's getting past that situation, right? And learning how to deal with it and using it, like you said, a superpower. I think a lot of people, you know, I've heard that a lot with like autism or stuff like that, you know, is like it's a superpower because it is. Think about that. I know a lot of people, um, you know, a lot of people that use this. Oh my god, what is going on? That's weird. You know, that use it and they just what is going on? My phone is freaking out. I think for me, you know, we are just very lucky to have who we are and to just be ourselves, you know, and I
Yeah,
think that's what this band's about is just being yourself.
100%. Um, I think we're good. I think that this notice just says that your device is running low on
Yeah,
storage.
okay, cool.
I can see that.
Yes, that is crazy. Well, yeah, it's because this what we use is like for you know, it records, I guess, and it saves it at the same time, I think. So I don't know. I paid for like a million bazillion megabytes on this thing, so I don't even know. It's always
It's all
something.
good. Well, let's just keep going. What is the most important thing for an aspiring musician to know about the industry?
Um, there's I think there's 2 things. One, always be yourself. I think if you're signing something, if there's all these other things, like to always be yourself, always believe in yourself, first, right? Believe what you feel, believe in what you're thinking, believe in what you're saying, because it will haunt you for the rest of your life, either in an interview or in a record deal that you're signing or the people that you're on tour with or whatever it is. Believe it. Believe it to the fullest.
I agree. You have to keep I mean, there's such a special theme to this chat where a lot of it is just keep going, man. Like, I mean, the amount
Yep.
of stuff that you have been through in your life so far, the underlying, I guess, theme that keeps coming up is just keep going. Right? Diamonds are made under pressure, and that you don't have a choice. You're stuck there, and you just have to keep shining brighter and brighter.
Yep. I think that's the biggest thing is I think once we were ourselves, once this band was ourselves, stuff started working for us. That was basically 2 years ago, and that's when we started getting the traction was 2 years ago. With
Yeah,
release was our song Dark Thoughts. That song is the song that did it, and that's because that's the most truish song I think on the record because we wrote it about OCD. We wrote it about my problem with OCD and how so many people don't believe it or how, you know, they don't understand what is going on up here.
yeah. I really appreciate your time, Lee. It's been such a
Hey.
wicked hour getting to know you a little better.
Of course, my man. Anytime. We could do it for 7 more hours if you need.
Well, there's always part 2 down the road.